What happens when you take giant killer advertisements, a dream-stalking janitor,
You've mastered a dead tongue, but can you handle a live one?
and early 90s CGI animation?
My stomach sticks way out in front and my...
Well, you get the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror 6, which debuted October 29th, 1995. Now, this is the first Treehouse of Horror not to have any kind of warning from Marge, cemetery scene, or even a wraparound. The main reason these things were left out was because the stories were becoming more complicated and needed more time to be fleshed out. Take Treehouse of Horror 3 for example. You don't get to the first story until 2.5 minutes into the episode. Whereas here, the first segment begins at the 27-second mark. The opening for Treehouse 6 is now a quick scene of Krusty as the Headless Horseman, and then a very family-friendly couch gag of the Simpsons all being hung. I understand the need to change things up and allow more time for the writers to work out their stories, but there's something about those opening cemetery scenes and wraparound segments that add to the whole spooky vibe of the episodes. The first segment, Attack of the 50-Foot Eyesores, is an obvious parody of Attack of the 50-Foot Woman. Or was it Attack of the 50-Foot Woman? Maybe Attack of the 50-Foot Cheerleader? How about Attack of the 50-Foot Cam Girl? What about Attack of the 60-Foot Centerfold? I'm guessing at least half of those are softcore adult films. This segment has Homer making his way to Lard Donuts to get himself one of their colossal donuts. However, when their colossal donut doesn't live up to his expectations, Homer decides to get his colossal donut no matter what. Let's see how many more times I can say colossal donut. Lard's Donuts makes its very first appearance in this episode and is based off several different things. Lard himself is based off the Big Boy restaurant mascot, which I'm surprised to see still exists. I thought that restaurant went out of business a long time ago. It's also slightly based off Krispy Kreme, and the donut was taken from Randy's Donuts in LA, which is an iconic location itself. Homer returns late night with a chain and snags himself his donut. However, there just so happens to be an atmospheric disturbance at this exact moment, and a lightning strike brings Lard to life. I love how he has Godzilla's roar for whatever reason. Apparently they used it without getting permission from Toho, which is risky because Toho is known for being litigious. But this isn't the first or last time The Simpsons has used something without asking. More and more mascots come to life and start to destroy all of Springfield. I've always wondered if this is also supposed to be a slight parody of Maximum Overdrive, the Stephen King film where all the electronics come to life after a passing comet/UFO. Homer is paid a little visit by Lard and all he wants back is his donut. So as long as Homer gives it to him, that should put an end to all this horror. Except it f***ing doesn't, and the mascots just continue their reign of terror. This is like when the dumbass in Jason X thought giving Jason his machete back would stop him from killing everyone.
It's okay, he just wanted his machete back!
Lisa notices the advertising agency who created the Lard mascot is in his shoe print, so she heads down to speak to them to see how they can stop all these mascots.
If you stop paying attention to the monsters, they'll lose their powers.
With anything, simply ignoring it is the best way to make it go away. Don't like what they're doing to your favorite franchise? Well, instead of constantly crying about it online, just stop watching the damn thing and move on. Lisa and the advertiser come up with a plan of creating a jingle to get the town's attention away from the monsters. And with the help of Paul Anka, it works. Paul Anka was actually the butt of a joke in an earlier episode, but sent the producers a thank you for at least mentioning him. The producers then contacted Paul and asked if he'd actually like to appear in an episode, and well, here we are. Next, we get our mandatory Kang and Kodos cameo for the episode, and something that always stood out for me as a kid was how Ken Brockman is suddenly alive at the end of the segment, despite clearly either being eaten or crushed to death by his own mascot.
Let me go! No! Stop! No!
The next segment, Nightmare on Evergreen Terrace, is clearly a parody of Friday the 13th. Alright, seriously, it's a parody of A Nightmare on Elm Street, and in my opinion, the strongest segment of the episode. In this one, groundskeeper Willie takes the place of Freddy Krueger, stalking and murdering the children of Springfield in their dreams. However, the backstories for why both kill are a bit different. Freddy Krueger was a child murderer who was burnt alive by the parents of Springwood after the court system failed, and he was let out because of a technicality. After this, he would go on to get his revenge by killing all of their children in the one place they can't protect them, their dreams. While here, Willie simply burned to death because the school was too cheap to pay for the simple safety measures.
We charge fire extinguishers. Now this is a free service of the fire department.
Nay!
Because of their neglect, Willie dies and tells the parents of Springfield that he'll get his revenge by killing all of their children in their dreams.
I'll strike where you cannot protect them. In their dreams.
Willie's story is a little more sympathetic than Freddy's. Freddy was always a monster, but Willie is just the school janitor who was more likely to save the kids than bring them harm.
Hold on, kids! I'm coming to rescue the lot of you! Ow! Ugh, I'm bad at this.
Willie first attacks Bart in a Tex Avery style manner, but when he gets to school, it looks like all the kids were attacked in some fashion.
There's no mystery about Willie. Why, he simply disappeared. Now, let's have no more curiosity about this bizarre cover-up.
The adults all hide what really happened to Willie from all the kids, and it all becomes a grand conspiracy. Although after Martin is killed by Willie at school, in a scene which directly references Wes Craven's New Nightmare, Marge lets the kids know the terrifying story. So just like in the Elm Street films, the kids do whatever they can to stay awake. However, unable to stay awake, Bart decides to go into his dream and have a final showdown with Willie. This segment is a lot scarier than some of the other parodies The Simpsons have done so far. Willie comes off as kind of creepy, and some of the imagery might actually be too scary for younger kids. I think the scare factor is something that's missing from a lot of the other segments that we'll see in later episodes. Bart tricks Willie into falling into some quicksand, but like all good monsters, they never actually die the first time. Lisa accidentally falls asleep, but leave it to Maggie and a pacifier to save the day. Blocking off Willie's bagpipe with a pacifier may seem like a dumb way of defeating Willie, but have you ever actually seen an Elm Street film? The way they kill Freddy rarely ever makes any damn sense, so this is fine.
Kids.
Although Willie now appears to be human again somehow, and has to ride the bus. Also something I'm not sure I've ever noticed before or simply forgot about because I haven't watched the episode in years, but groundskeeper Willie can be briefly seen in the very beginning before he attacks Bart. It goes by so quick that it's not really noticeable unless you slow things down. The final segment, Homer Cubed, is a parody of the Twilight Zone episode Little Girl Lost, about a young girl who gets trapped in the 4th dimension. When I was a kid, I never knew how to say the title for the segment because I thought it was Homer 3, which doesn't really make any sense. The main reason I thought this was because the title looked so much like the title for Alien 3. By this point, I had seen Alien 3 like a million times because my parents made the mistake of buying me the Alien Trilogy box set when I was like 9 years old. But according to the commentary for this episode, I was half right because the title was meant to look like Alien 3, but it is called Homer Cubed. Homer Cubed is only loosely based on Little Girl Lost and feels like more of a tech demo for what they were able to do with computers than anything else. In fact, the very first computer animated movie Toy Story would come out only a few weeks later. In this segment, Patty and Selma are coming over for a visit, and Homer, who absolutely hates them, discovers a portal behind a bookcase.
It's like something out of that Twilighty show about that zone.
I don't exactly blame Homer for not wanting to be around his sisters-in-law because they are pretty insufferable. But the rest of the episode is less on the story and more on showing off those impressive computer effects and funny gags. The animation may not be super impressive by today's standards, but you really need to consider when this came out. Stuff like this was not the norm at the time. Homer crosses over through the portal and into the 3rd dimension. With Homer now stuck in this new dimension, Marge and the others can hear him, but they don't know where he is.
I don't want to alarm you, Marge, but I seem to be trapped in here.
We better call Ned. He has a ladder.
This joke is subtle, but funny if you've seen Little Girl Lost. In that, the parents call their neighbor Bill, who just so happens to be a physicist, in order to help get their daughter back. Where here Marge calls Flanders, but all he has is a ladder. Anyways, more Springfieldians come to Homer's aid, including Professor Frink, who believes Homer to be trapped in the 3rd dimension.
Here is an ordinary square.
Whoa, slow down, egghead.
An accident with a cone causes the dimension to start collapsing in on itself, and now time is of the essence. Bart is tired of waiting and ties a rope around his waist and runs in after his father. He's a little too late, however, and Homer is sucked into the black hole, where he's sent into our world to take in some erotic cakes.
Ooh, erotic cakes.
The computer animation for Homer Cubed was done by PDI, or Pacific Data Images, the company behind films like Ants, Shrek, and Madagascar. They wanted to keep the characters looking as close to their 2D counterparts as possible without reinventing anything. One of the issues they ran into was how they would translate Bart's hair. However, a solution to this problem had already been solved by the Simpsons' very own merchandise. 3D vinyl figures of the Simpsons already existed for years, so the team took one of Bart and scanned it into the computer. They also had trouble with making the characters move fluidly and not look like robots. One of the most important shots to really make the whole thing work was when Homer went from the 2D world into the 3D world. Executive producer Bill Oakley, who pitched the idea for Homer Cubed, worked with the animators but struggled in getting his idea across for how he wanted the transition to look. In the end though, they managed to get what he wanted, and he considers it to be the money shot for the segment. An edited version for the computer effects portion of Homer Cubed also appeared in the IMAX anthology film Cyberworld 3D, which took pieces of computer animated works and turned them into what was called the first ever 3D animated film. The computer effects weren't the only challenge with this segment either, as Fox fought with the producers over the live action section. Fox felt it would be too costly to shoot a live action scene using a crane, but director David Merkin fought tooth and nail until eventually Fox gave in. Kind of. They allowed him to shoot the scene, but didn't give him enough support in order to block off the street, so when the crane swings over, you can see a lineup of cars waiting to go. Even though this may have been a problem for the producers, I don't think the average viewer would have noticed the lineup of cars, because realistically, they could have just been waiting at a red light. David Merkin had a green ball and a pole go down the street, so the actors knew where to look and how to react. And I hate to break it to people, but there is no actual erotic cakes. It was simply a photography studio that the crew painted over and made to look like some adult bakery. The Simpsons Treehouse of Horror 6 is a good episode, with the unfortunate task of having to follow what many consider to be the best, which is part 5. Attack of the 50-Foot Eyesores isn't spooky, but it's got some good giant monster fun. There's a lot of fun gags, and it takes a nice jab at commercialism. Nightmare on Evergreen Terrace is the best segment in my opinion, and one that truly takes advantage of what a horror episode or parody should be. Homer Cubed, like I said, feels more like a tech demo than anything. It shows off all the fancy animation they're able to do, and because of this, it has very little story. I'm not sure Little Girl Lost is the best Twilight Zone episode for a horror-themed parody in the first place, but it still is a fun episode. Overall, I do recommend Treehouse of Horror 6. It's not as good as what came before in my opinion, but the wheels haven't fallen off the wagon just yet. Anyways, that's all for today. If you want some more Treehouse of Horror goodness, you can check out my playlist right here. I hope you're having a great week, and I'll see you in the next Simpsons Treehouse of Horror.
Lock your doors, bar your windows, because the next advertisement you see could destroy your house and eat your family.
We'll be right back.